most of the labs with Laboratory Nexus that we work with are small to medium-sized laboratories. And so for these labs, typically net profit, with some add backs or EBITDA are the most common numbers that we see for a basis of evaluation, right? So we've been seeing in our area, we've been seeing deals in kind of a 4 to 6 times multiple, but again, valuation can depend on many factors. So for profitable laboratories, though, most of our potential buyers, they value stability. They're looking at the financials for the last typically 3 to 5 years, and maybe more recently for the valuation, but they're wanting to see what does a company have? And so just as a recommendation for labs out there, we recommend that our clients review their financial statements periodically. And this is just a kind of a quick nugget here. Recommend them at least working with your CPA once a year, and really with the idea of increasing revenue, figuring out opportunities to increase revenue. Maybe that's acquiring a book of business from another laboratory. Maybe that's growing and adding additional testing lines, but also looking at your financial statements, your profit and loss statement, and seeing, are there areas in the expense area to cut some unnecessary expenses, right? And so for this call, we're really looking at kind of a lot of opportunities, but not necessarily just the financial side of things. One of the other areas that we've seen come up quite often, and John alluded in his initial intro, he alluded to this. We've seen a lot of groups looking for insurance contracts. So as an example, we recently had a group that was in the East Coast seeking to expand to the Midwest, and they were looking for certain labs with certain in-network contracts in certain states. So our recommendation here again, this is really the idea of increasing your marketability. So maybe look at the option of growing your in-network credentialing list. Your billing company may be able to work on that as well. But again, as John mentioned, Lighthouse has a whole division of their company that's kind of dedicated to helping groups not only review their current insurance contracts, but also bringing in new ones. So that may be an opportunity for you guys as well to expand. Also, and McDonald's Hopkins might touch on this later as well, but from a due diligence perspective, it's helpful before a group is interested in selling a laboratory, it's helpful to know what contracts you have. And then also a little bit about those contracts. Are they transferable? Are there any disputes or issues that may come up in a due diligence? And so our recommendation, just like with the financial piece, is to review your credentialing list and review kind of your strategy for this at least once a year. And again, Lighthouse might be a good starting point for that as well. So similarly to contracts, I'm going to move over to talking about CLIA licensure. And so if you guys are in the laboratory world right now, you guys are either CLIA certified. You guys may have a COLA, CAP, SAMHSA accreditation. And we've seen groups that have been reaching out to us fairly recently and over the last 7 to 8 years. Many groups are interested in that CAP accreditation. So if your group has a CLIA certification and maybe looking at increasing your marketability of your laboratory, maybe looking to improve that or add CAP accreditation might be an opportunity to bring some additional marketability to your lab. The next piece as well, state-specific licensure. My understanding is I believe 6 states in the country require that you have a state license in order to do testing in that state. So if you're living in North Carolina, if your lab's in North Carolina and you want to test somebody from New York, you would have to have a New York license. We get asked fairly often by companies to find labs that are licensed in all 50 states. And so if your group, if you're not, if you don't have those 6 licenses, again, maybe working through getting that credentialing as well. I think Lighthouse also has a group that can help with that also if there's additional interest. And then really the third piece to this is, the quality of testing that a laboratory provides. And so we see in a due diligence packet, normally a group's going to be evaluating the inspection history, the reports, things in the laboratories that might end up actually maybe reducing the value of a laboratory. So we recommend to, maybe auditing yourself, looking at your own history prior to inspections, maybe have Lighthouse come out and do a mock inspection of your laboratory. We recommend taking some of those steps as well, just to make sure that, from a compliance perspective and from a quality perspective, that your lab's in good shape. And again, that way, when we get to a due diligence, things will move much smoother there. Another area that we think is, I think is probably one of the most important pieces, and John alluded to this as well a little bit earlier, is really to look at your billing, right? To look at a company's billing. If your laboratory, many laboratories use internal billing. Some use third-party billing companies as well. And we've worked with Lighthouse groups that we've sent over previously. We've worked with them to go through and audit some of the companies that we work with, some of their billing ahead of time prior to listing a laboratory. And many times they're able to find opportunities to, maybe there's some revenue that they're leaving off the table, right? And so we would recommend, working with a third party group to do a billing audit. And this might be something you could do yearly or every 2 years, but they'll go out there and actually audit your billing companies and see, is there anything left on the table? But from a regulatory side, this also helps from the perspective of, hey, are there any inefficiencies or discrepancies in billing? Once a group gets to the point of due diligence, in my experience, we've seen lab deals that have really slowed down because of this billing piece. So really understanding these in your laboratory prior to a listing is ideal. Sometimes it can lead to increased revenue, but also it may help from a due diligence perspective also.